This afternoon. I know it's an absolutely revolting day out there. It's pouring with rain, and I'm thrilled to bits that so many of you could join us. The Datsuns, as I mentioned earlier, are en route. They're currently sound checking at the moment, and they will be the important man in John Peel's. John Peel, come on, Nottingham. He is an absolutely extraordinary man, and I'm certain that there's not a single person in here today that wouldn't put their hand up and say, John Peel is my dream dad. He certainly has always been mine. I have to say, when I was a little kid...
Could have been a nasty case of incest if I'd had it.
When I was a little kid, my dad banned all music from the house. He smashed up all my punk rock records and smashed up my record player, but he didn't find a tiny little transistor radio that I had, and I used to listen every night under my bedclothes to this man's show. And he changed my life, literally, and he made me believe that you can live your dreams, you can follow every principle that you truly believe in, and you know, you can live with a true soul. And in a music industry now that is so commercially driven, this man represents a total no sellout policy, and I'm certain that's why we're all here to talk to him today. He's an absolute legend, and but as I say, anyway, let's move on. Enough of my ramblings. I know that many of you have got questions for John today. Obviously, make yourself visible, stick your hand in the air. This lovely lady over here has got a microphone. If you have a question that you'd like to put to John about his extraordinary life, let's do it. And when the Datsuns arrive, they can muck in if we decide to let him, because they're really late. So, yeah, who'd like to ask John a question? Man over at the back, he's a really long way away. Let's see if we can get to him. Can we pass that mic? That's brilliant. Bit of a baton situation with the mic. Good.
It's not working after all of that.
Is it turned on? I can hear you anyway, go on.
Is that on?
That's it, yeah.
Hello, John. I'm not sure what speed to ask this question. How do you feel?
Very wounding.
I was going to ask how you feel about the role of pirate radio. Has the role of pirate radio changed since you were on like Radio Caroline days?
Well, that's one of those questions, rather like people who stop me in the street and accuse me of being Bob Harris. You'd be amazed how often that happens. And a lot of you probably don't remember Bob Harris, but he used to... That's a bit unkind, actually, isn't it? But he used to introduce the old grey whistle test, and a number of people said, oh, I remember you from the whistle test, taxi drivers mainly. And I said, actually, that wasn't me. There's somebody, oh, come on, don't mess about, you know, I know it was you. And as far as you're concerned, I wasn't on Radio Caroline, but on Radio London, which was the rival pirate ship. And frankly, actually, I live in Stowmarket in Suffolk, in East Anglia, and there is no pirate radio, alas, out there, so I don't really hear very much pirate radio. I have to spend a couple of days each week in London, which is, I have to admit, not a place I like very much, so I spend as little time there as possible, and don't really listen to an awful lot of radio, so I'm not quite sure what the role of pirate radio is. So that's rather... Thanks, John. Rather an unsatisfactory answer, all things being considered. But I should say, actually, to counter Mary Ann's initial build-up, of course, as they should, my children bit out at all. I think I'm a bit of a dick.
That's an absolute lie. I can tell you that for nothing. Anybody else got a question for us? Let's have a look. Here, this lovely young lady. Do you want my mic? It's a bit easier, isn't it?
I've just got to say, I've had to grow up with you. Whether from day one I did not like you, my dad made me listen to you, and I hated every minute of it. But now I've grown up, I've got to love both of your voices, and then just got to know Radio 1 better. But we were sitting here thinking, what are all over 18? And what about younger people? How do you feel like they're catering for it?
Well,
you know what I mean?
yeah, I know exactly what you mean. And one of the things that pleases me enormously about the programmes we do, and I should embarrass them by saying, this is Louise who produces my programme, and that's Dave who does sometimes as well, and I'm not quite sure what his job description is. It's one of those things he's got like initials after his name, H2SO4 or something. But anyway, they're the people who do the technical stuff on the programme. And for reasons which we don't really fully understand, the programme has the highest percentage of listeners under the age of 16 on the radio station, right down apparently to 4. What they're doing up at that time of night, I have no idea at all, but this is... And obviously there are a lot of programmes, if you listen to Radio 1, you'll realise that a great number of them are aimed very specifically at that audience, and they kind of miss the target somehow, and yet we don't try for any particular audience at all. There's no point in me trying to pretend that I'm anything other than what I am. A lot of people, a lot of DJs, well-known DJs whose names I could mention in this context but won't, were once upon a time the same age as myself, and now they're 5 or 6 years younger. But I think if you just do what you do and present, put it out there for people, they'll pick up on it. And I think one of the reasons that a lot of younger kids listen to it is because they haven't at that stage of their lives chosen up sides. They haven't decided that they're mods or rockers, whatever the contemporary equivalent of that is. And so they just, what have you got? Give us a bit of it, we'd like to hear it. And as far as gigs go, then that is a problem. I think they should be able to get into these gigs, but then I know that it's, the law of the land, local regulations and so forth, make it impossible for it to happen. So not much we can do about it, really.
You're stuck in a very, very difficult situation, really, because a lot of the promoters who put these gigs on want to sell alcohol on the premises, and it's as simple as that, really. You need to be over 18 to get onto a licensed premise. That said, there are a huge number of rock bands particularly doing all kinds of things inside schools and for, under 16-year-old audiences that are just the most phenomenal nights. And I certainly would like to encourage that and see more of it. I think it'd be really good. How old are you? 1 year to go, yeah. Okay, anybody else got another question for John? Here we go.
Hi, John. You're locked in a room with George Bush. What advice are you giving him?
I think I should probably just disembowel him. I don't think I'm not much of a fighting man, but I think I could come up with one or two things. A terrifyingly stupid, dangerous, venal man, and the most dangerous man on the planet, I think. So I think advice would be wasted, to be honest. I don't think you'd understand what you were talking about. So.
Another question for John.
Can I just, Marianne, sorry, I know you carry on. Something I always do, because people don't believe that I do this sort of thing, is I always take photographs of the audience. So while Marianne speaks to you, I'll just take a photo of you. Okay. Don't smile. Okay, that's good.
Okay, lovely gentleman over here.
Hello. We've got a song about George Bush on our CD, if you'd like to hear it.
I couldn't see where you were. Okay, let's have it.
Can I just take this opportunity also to mention, while John has a route through his new demos, look at him gleefully, sort of looking at the track listings already. I just wanted to say from a personal point of view to everyone who's come to the gigs for Radio 1 this week, we have had a phenomenal week. Honestly, thank you so much for coming out for us in such enormous numbers. This week has been one of the best weeks of my life. I can't tell you how fantastic it's been, and I'm absolutely gutted to be going home this afternoon. Obviously, John's only just got here on his first glass of Rioja, so... second, all right. Oh. Yeah, plenty more to come. Okay, another question for John. Let's have a look what we've got over here.
I'm sorry the Datsuns aren't here, by the way, but
They're coming.
They will turn up.
That's okay. Obviously, you've pioneered a lot of bands and bands that come up through Peel sessions and stuff, and they've gone on to do very well. I just wondered which of those you're most proud of.
Well, you know, I don't really think of it in those terms. I mean, it's I do what I do because I like doing it, and it's good if you can give people draw a bit of attention to what they're doing. But I don't really think of it in terms of like trying to advance their careers particularly. I just think that if what they're doing is worth hearing, then I'm in a position to put them on the radio and enable other people to hear what they're doing. So I suppose it'd be rather obscure things. Like my favourite sessions, I think, apart from something like 23 Fall sessions and the Undertones, and what else? There were a couple of sessions that the Slits did for Radio 1 back in the punk days that were amazing. Reggae sessions I've always been really pleased with. Misty and Roots done several, and Gregory Isaacs did a couple. One of the problems is, though, that we always try to book reggae acts when they're in the country, and they simply don't turn up. It seems to be, I don't know why this is. We had we had Sugar Miner booked 3 times, and he never turned up, because I love reggae, and I think it should be on the radio. You know, it should get as fair a crack on as all these kind of twats from these. I'm not supposed to swear, am I? Okay. All these talented young people from these TV programs and things. Obviously, they get more than their fair share of exposure. And to me, the fact that all of that stuff is on the radio constantly, and a lot of great reggae records don't get played at all, except on so-called specialist programs, has outraged me for 30 years. And hopefully I'll be around to be outraged for a few more years yet. But it is very frustrating when actually there's a fellow called Luciano, for example, who's made some glorious records over the last 2 or 3 years, and there's some strange magazine that works out, which records we've played most on the programme, which artists have been most regularly featured. And I think last year Luciano was the most featured artist on the programme. And he was going to come in and do a session for us, and called up, like 12 hours before he was supposed to start, couldn't do it. And this happens all the time, and it's really frustrating because it means you still have to pay for the studio costs and the engineers' costs and so on. So I'm rambling slightly here and getting rather a long way from the question, which I've now completely forgotten. But at the same time, for those of you who think, why isn't there more reggae on the radio? That's one of the reasons, because people don't turn up to do the sessions.
I'll let you into a little secret about John, actually.
Well,
Just while you're drumming up some other questions. He still always cries every single time he plays Teenage Kicks on the radio. Okay, another question. Let me see.
Hi, John. Just wanted to know if William, your son, has managed to tidy his room yet.
Oh, God. This is a reference for those of you who obviously are not fully up to speed on the minutiae of my family life, which is probably most of you. We've got 4 children, of which William is the eldest, and lives now in Newcastle, and we don't see him very often. But he did have the most astonishingly dirty and untidy bedroom, and I wouldn't dream of taking people who came to the house to see it as some kind of tourist thing, but at the same time people occasionally walked past and looked in through the door, and they would whistle in astonishment and say, actually that really is quite spectacular. And there was a TV programme, one of those things where they did a programme about like An Old Man Remembers, and in the course of it, when they'd finished it, I was sitting talking to the director or producer, whatever he's called, about children, and I knew they were still filming me. It'd been naive to pretend that I didn't realise that, but we were talking about kids and talking about his children and stuff, and so I kept talking about William's bedroom and the distress it caused me, really, because we'd kind of give him stuff that, we'd buy him little prezzies and things, and they'd just disappear into the pile of foul tissues on the floor, and just, it was so bad that in the corners of the room, where the floor joins the wall, there'd be like a curve like that, just of kind of compressed filth. And it used to distress me that he didn't look after the stuff that we gave him. And so anyway, I'm going to have to swear, I'm afraid. I don't want to offend you here, but I've got to tell you the truth. We did this interview, and then the TV people, as they will, bless them, took the tapes away and edited them and produced something like about an 18-minute long rant, an attack by me on my son, who I adore. And when it went out on television, we were sitting watching it all, and it just went on and on and on. And he eventually just turned to me and he said, "You fucking bastard." And he was quite right too. He was absolutely right. And he didn't speak to me for 8 days, which I think showed amazing forbearance on his part, to be honest.
William's room, it has to be said, is kind of elevated now in almost legendary folklore status. It's almost like an episode of the League of Gentlemen, you know, that's what it embodies
They're just
in
beginners.
itself. Yeah. Gentleman over here, you had a question for John. Hang on.
Hi, I'm Ant from the Pit Stops. Right, understand you don't have enough time in the day to listen to all the demos you sent through. So what do you do with the ones you don't listen to?
Feel amazingly guilty about them. We've got several sheds in the garden, which are just piled high with boxes of unheard records. And I mean, I do, as people who know me would confirm, I do listen to them. You know, while I'm awake, I'm listening to records and demos and things. But there are about 3 times as many, because I once calculated it, so at a time like this, I could give a reasonably coherent answer. And I counted up, on the basis of like a CD being like an hour, CD LP being an hour, 12-inch single being 15 minutes, 7-inch single being 5 minutes, that sort of thing. And in an average week, I get 3 weeks worth of music coming in. I'm not complaining, so obviously I like that, but I mean, that's if I was to listen day and night, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, there's still 3 weeks worth of music coming in, so obviously I can't hear all of that. So they just pile up around the house, and we don't know what to do with them, to be honest. You know, you think you can't take them to a landfill site. People's lives are tied up in them. And every once in a while you kind of dip in and you pick one out and you put it on, and it's amazing. And I know that amongst those that are unheard, there's going to be all kinds of extraordinary stuff, and I'll try and get Louise and Dave involved as much as possible, but you know, they're getting an amazing amount of stuff to listen to as well. So we just do the best we can. We don't claim that we're getting it right at all, but we're getting it less wrong than 1 or 2 other people, anyway.
Well, can you put this one with the others one we sent you in the shed, then?
You're a silver-tongued devil. I'll tell you what they're called. What's it called? You gave it to me upside down. Oh, we've already got one of these. That's the second one. Pit Stops. Are they any good? Anybody seen the Pit Stops? Your fan base is pretty limited.
Okay, let's have a look. Have we got another question for John anyway? Let me see, this gentleman over here. Let me see if I can reach you. Okie doke. Here we go.
John, if you're a millionaire, would it be a day in space, dumper truck racing, or if not, what?
I don't think what did you say? If I was a millionaire?
Yeah. A day in space, dumper truck racing, if not, what?
If I was a millionaire, God. Well, what would I do? I'm tempted to say that I'd give the bulk of it to our children, but before I did that, I'd buy myself an exceptionally fast and dangerous car, and as a lot of old blokes do. And in fact, Mary Ann is only too aware of this. I live in a place called Stowmarket, and in between us and Ipswich there's a little town called Needham Market. And in Needham Market, which is a very agricultural place, there is a TVR dealership, and God alone knows why, because none of the people around there can afford to buy one. But there has been in the window of the TVR dealership in Needham Market for the last 2 or 3 years a car which I would love to have. It's just, I can't remember what it's called. What's it called? Cerberus S.
The Tuscan S.
Tuscan S it
Yeah.
is. And it's a kind of rather poncy violet colour. And the front of it looks like an old-fashioned electric razor. And it just doesn't sound like much, but to me it represents heaven. And for my last birthday, Mary Ann arranged for me to drive this car to Snetterton Raceway. and back, and it was just fantastic because you get all these dickheads in their BMWs, the kind of people. I don't know what this is. Do any of you drive BMWs? You don't look like a BMW crowd, to be honest. But I always find if you overtake a BMW, it's got to overtake you back immediately. And whenever anybody carves you up or behaves stupidly on the roads, BMWs. But if you're driving a car like that, the BMWs go past you, you just think, you know, and I know that I can whip your ass. And that's all you need. You don't need to do it. In fact, it's probably better that you don't, Make them insecure.
Auto Trader is better than pornography as far as John's concerned, I think, probably.
Yes, much better.
Okay, another question. Let me see. We got one. Yes. Okay, great.
Okay, but TVR is your view of heaven. What's your view of hell? And by the way, I've got a dangerous car you can buy, but it's not very fast.
My idea of hell. Difficult. What's my idea of hell? There's nothing, it's kind of small stuff that really makes me unhappy. Obviously set against the scale of human suffering, the things that happen to me are nothing, really. I have an amazing time. I'd love to have more hair and, be a bit thinner and have a willy that still worked, and, that's diabetes for you. But the things that I really hate, like Sheila, my wife, got stung yesterday by a wasp and was really in pain and upset. And it's those, she had a brain hemorrhage about 5 years ago and very nearly died. And for myself and all of our children, the thing that none of us can really cope with is the thought of her being ill. So that would be the answer. That sounds rather sentimental, but I don't really know, actually. Can't think of anything else.
Just let me say, let's not pursue the whole Willy angle at this juncture, because this is a live webcast of the entire globe.
But you find that at least 50%, about 48% of the people listening probably have willies.
Yeah, that's enough detail, I think, on that issue. Okay, a man at the back, right over the very back there. Yep, can we pass that mic over? Cheers.
Hello. What do you think the future of music festivals is, John? Now that we've got massive rings of steel around Glastonbury, and you've got rioting at Leeds, what's your thoughts?
Well, there are plenty of little festivals or smaller festivals going on all over the country that are still run for reasons other than sort of crass commercial reasons, and still put on a lot of good music and a lot of muck as well. But at the same time, I'd rather be going to those, to be perfectly honest. There'll always be festivals, I think. I'm not really interested in going to see famous people being famous about half a mile away. I can't see the point in that at all. So, I don't go. And I'd rather go to see, which I failed to do this weekend, but could have done, the Bury St Edmunds band competition and stuff like that. Where you just go and see. Obviously I'm a 63-year-old bloke. No, you don't look it, no, please. But the thing is that I'd rather, all my life and now, I'd rather experience stuff that I've not experienced before, and I'd sooner see something I've not seen before, I'd sooner hear things I've not heard before, and there's plenty of opportunity to do that. If you want to go and stand in a field somewhere and see Coldplay, a mile or so away, playing tracks on their new LP, not quite as well as they play them in the studio, then that's up to you. I don't blame people for wanting to do that. But frankly, I'd sooner have painful and humiliating rectal surgery.
There is a wonderful story that I already know that I really feel John should reiterate about the very first festival that he ever DJ'd at, which was in Buxton in 1968. And he recounted to me at Glastonbury Festival a couple of years ago. Will you tell it for us today, please?
Well, I don't suppose any of you were at Buxton in 1968. Are you? But you weren't there in 1968, though, were you? Well, it was up in the hills above Buxton, and you are? Taste. I don't think they were. No, Chuck Berry was supposed to be on. That's all I can remember is Chuck Berry was supposed to be on, and I can't remember any of the rest of it. But the thing was, it was the second one actually, and I'd been there the year before and hadn't learned my lesson. And in those days, a lot of those things that when you did them, you didn't get paid. But because I was interested in the music and things, I used to turn up. And when I got there, it had been raining fairly solidly for about 2 or 3 days. So the whole place was like Flanders, you know, in the First World War. And there were no medical services at all. The toilets were where you stood. There was no food, there was no drink, there was just nothing at all. The police were camped about half a mile away, and when at one stage I went over to them and said, could they come and do perhaps a bit of policing, seeing as that's what police essentially seem to be for. They said they had to wait until there was an offence had been committed. And I said, what about preventive policing? And obviously in Buxton, they'd never heard of such a whimsical notion. So they didn't come down at all. And the bloke who was the stage manager, nice man, often wonder what became of him, was the man. There's something called like the Alhambra in Buxton. There's some kind. You'd be able to tell me, is there some kind of nightclub or something in?
I think there's one nightclub.
Okay, but because they change their names every couple of years, don't they? Those places stay one step ahead of the law. And anyway, he was the stage manager and the manager of that place, and he actually turned out, and not in any sense, ironic sense at all. He was in like gentleman's natty evening wear, bow tie, and you know, the whole outfit, and he's completely out of his depth because he'd never had to deal with these kind of people before. And I was supposed to be playing the records and doing the announcements between the bands, and I said, well, where's the PA? And he said, well, you know, there effectively wasn't one. I said, well, what am I supposed to play records on? And he said, hold on a minute. And he drove back to his house and brought me his home stereo. And it's one of those things with a kind of dark grey smoked top that you and I was rushing around trying to plug it into things, you know, so I could play the odd record. And there were a lot of motorcycle fans had turned up and were cavorting in the mud. And most of them very hairy men who were stark naked and covered in warts and mud. And it was just a nightmare, and they're all flinging mud at the stage. Chuck Berry refused to go on. Almost everybody refused to go on. And I was standing there, and a bloke jumped up alongside me, again, naked man covered in mud. I'm not at my best with naked men covered in mud. And he said, I want to make an announcement. And he got this knife, and I said to him, look, I tell you what, mate, actually, I'll make it better for you than that. I said, from now on, you're the compere. And I gave him the microphone, and it's the only time I've ever walked out on a gig, and I don't know what he got to say. And I walked away, and I looked at my watch, and I thought, if I leave now, I can get home in time for Match of the Day, which I did manage to do. But there was the most arresting image of the whole thing for me. It was as I was walking down the hill, and as I say, it was just a sea of mud, grey skies, torrential rain. And it was like something out of Flanders. You see those pictures, you know, that were taken during the First World War. And there were these 3 lads, and they got an old army ground sheet, and they were just facing inwards, looking at each other, and they're all bent forward like that, as though they were like tent poles, with this ground sheet over the top of them. And I thought, this represents some kind of ultimate in misery. And it was, and you used to get a lot of those kind of festivals in the 1960s. That's the end of that, really. There's not a punchline or a joke.
Okay, let me have a look over here. Yeah. Oh, okay, lady in the red. Let's hear it.
My friends do free festivals in Buxton, so you're going to do a repeat performance there next year?
I'm not going to be there. I wish you well. I wish your friends the very best of health and good fortune, but I should be elsewhere.
Okie doke. Let me have a look. There's plenty of people over in this direction by the looks of things. I'll just squeeze past you.
Hi, John.
Where are these New Zealand buggers anyway? Where are they?
About 15 minutes away.
15 minutes away. They always say that, don't they?
Yeah, John, who's winning in a fight between Captain Beefheart and the Magic Band and The Fall versus The Fall? And also, sorry, a second question. A few years back, I saw you in a magazine with a T-shirt, I can't swear as you say, John Peel is a...
Rude word.
Yeah. Do you still have the T-shirt also?
I do have the T-shirt.
Sorry, could you also sign my Captain Beefheart
I will, of course.
CD with what it said on the
I do have the T-shirt. It doesn't fit anymore, I'm afraid, as I become increasingly pear-shaped over the years. But I don't make those, you know, there are times, there's I don't those kind of comparative judgments. I can't really say, you know, The Fall are better than Beefheart or vice versa.
In a fight.
Eh? In a fight? That's an interesting thought, because they're both, you know, I wouldn't want to see it, because they're both in a bit of a state, to be honest. Mark E. Smith and Don Van Vliet. I wouldn't like to pick a winner there, to be honest, but as far as the music goes, to me, it's, you know, you're making those kind of comparative judgments, and they end up by being meaningless. It's saying like Tuesday's better than a piece of string, you know what I mean? So it doesn't make sense at all. Sorry, Marianne, you don't just sat back down again too.
Yeah, no, I was just recounting an extraordinary episode on the Breeze Block actually, when Mark E. Smith came in to DJ for us. John left the building at about 70 mile an hour on foot. I mean, literally like shot out of the door, because Mark E. Smith is quite, what's the word? Quite an extraordinary man these days as the years have passed, really. And I remember he was so paralytic he couldn't actually play his own records. And Mark E. Smith, no, it's not John. So paralytic was he when he turned up. And I have a wonderful assistant, or I did do at the time, called Damien Wilson, who is now producer of Pete Tong, whose job it became to play the records. It was the first time he'd ever played anything live on air on Radio 1, and he was absolutely petrified. Couple this with Mark E. Smith, roaring drunk, sort of like swinging at him like this. He's literally playing the record. See, Mark E. Smith is like slugging his fist like this at Damien. It was a real sort of baptism of fire. As I say, on the very same night, John took one look at Mark E. Smith and went, "Oh my God, he's in the building," and shot off at high speed, didn't you?
Yeah, never meet your heroes. It's a good bit of advice for you youngsters.
Yeah. Let me see. There was another man over here. Let's get some.
Sorry. John, you were recently voted out of 100 people, the 37th most influential person in the entire...
43rd, if you know, yeah.
Oh, maybe I was drunk. Anyway,
it's not important.
You were in the top 50 anyway, and that was a list of the most influential people in the history of the UK. What are your feelings about that?
Well, I mean, quite clearly, it's, you know, I mean, I was very pleased that I was in there, because it's one of those things that you can... It's rather like I got the OBE a few years ago, and when I was offered it, you get this letter from the Palace on amazingly expensive notepaper, and saying, you know, would you be prepared to accept the OBE or something? And we had a family meeting to talk about it, and Al Williams said, what would be the point in not accepting it? And it's not a bad point, really. He said you could sit in the village pub for the rest of your life when, you know, you got the opportunity. Because I was offered one of those OB, fuck off, you know, I was on with it.
You're going to be in real trouble, do you know
I'm
that?
sorry, yes, I'm sorry.
I'll retract that immediately, okay. I do apologise, global viewers.
You know, it's just, we ended up by having one of the funniest days we've ever had in our lives together as a family. We were put in this fantastically expensive hotel at Hyde Park Corner, which had a bed in it that was so vast that all 6 of us could get in it. We've got a photograph of all 6 of us lying in this bed. And then in the morning I went off to the Palace, and it's one of those things, you go in there and it's no wonder that they're all barking mad, because it's not... can I say that? There's no swearing. It's, you go in and you're herded into kind of different enclosures. These were the OBEs and these are the MBEs and so on. And of course, you're thinking, well, this is quite special, you know, getting the OBE for services to radio. But then it's all put into perspective, and I'm not belittling other people's achievements at all, because what it is, it's more to do with, if you continue to do the same thing for a very long period of time, then you earn the respect of somebody or other. And you can either see what I've done as selfless dedication to the cause of public service broadcasting, or a shocking lack of ambition. And in a way, it's both of those things. I've never wanted to do anything other than what I do. So from the age of about 28, 29, I was doing exactly what I wanted to do in life. So I've just carried on doing it. And the day I was done, a woman got the MBE for 25 years, services to flower arranging in Worcestershire. You know, and good for her. So but that's what it's about, really, is the fact that you've done something for a very long time. And I think that number 43 in the greatest Britons of all time stuff. I mean, it's plainly ridiculous, you know, but at the same time, quite funny. And our reaction to it has been really to appreciate the comic aspects of it more than anything else, and also to look and see who the people I have to be so careful. Who the people were who were ahead of me. Frank Whittle. All he did was invent the jet engine. Who does he think he is? You know. So, when I got all those amazing skills, playing records, saying what they're called, playing another record. Wow. Yeah.
You have made some extraordinary stands in your time, though, John. I mean, tell us about the days when punk was banned at the BBC. You still played it.
Well, it was never. The thing was, the BBC's always had these. It's very different now, obviously, goodness me, under an astute controller and an amazing team behind him. But there was a time when being the controller of Radio 1 was a job that you drifted into in the twilight of a rather undistinguished career, it has to be said. I don't want to be unkind about any of the former holders of office, but I may be. There was one bloke, for example, who had the job. In fact, he was controller of both radios 1 and 2. And not an unpleasant chap, but he got the job because he had previously been head of the Chinese section at the BBC World Service. And somebody had looked at him and said, he's our man. He's the one we must have. And he knew nothing about popular music at all. But, miraculously, he was a public school boy. And I was taken in, I was the last of the DJs to be taken in to meet him. And this was in the days of, you know, stellar personalities like Dave Lee Travis and so on, and Simon Bates, all these people who mattered so much in your lives. I went in there to talk to him, and I made some reference. I said something about public schools, and he said, rather astonished, he said, "Well, you know somebody who's been to a public school?" I said, "No, actually, I went to one myself." And he said, I was thinking of some kind of rather obscure establishment on the south coast of England. He said, "Which one did you go to?" So I said, "Well, I went to Shrewsbury." He said, "Shrewsbury?" He said, "What house were you in?" And this is a Dr. Strangelove situation, you know, this kind of yellow lighting and a huge desk with nothing on it, and him looking over the top of it at me in obvious disapproval. And I said, "Well, I was in Riggs Hall." He said, "How's old Brookie?" Who was the housemaster. And it's one of those things where you suddenly realise that it's nothing to do with what you do or how you do it. At that time, it's because you'd been to the right school, and however unpleasant you appeared to be, and they thought that, you know, you were on the same side as them. And I've forgotten what the question was.
Punk.
Eh?
Punk.
Oh, punk, yeah. Right. Come on. Well, the thing was that at that time the controller was a man called Derek Chinnery. He was not keen on the... In fact, my producer at the time was an amazing man, now alas dead, called John Walters, and he's my best man at our wedding and so on. He's a lovely man, very clever, great debater, and he used to go into meetings and things, and Radio 1 meetings, and they used to hate him because he could really tie the management up, because they weren't terribly bright, and he could really mess them up in these meetings, and just by going straight to the heart of things and just saying, hold on a second, you know, and he's a terrifying man to meet in that kind of context, and I'd have hated to have a row with him myself. But he was called in by this Derek Chinnery, and he asked John, he said, "I hope I can have your assurance that we're not playing any of this punk rock on the radio." And Walters was delighted to be able to say, "Well, actually, the last 2 programmes we did consisted of nothing but." And at that point, obviously, it was too late to try and do anything about it. But they had this strange thing where they would ban records, except they would never admit that they were banned. So in theory, you could play them if you got permission from somebody on the management, but they never failed to give you that permission. So they were banned and yet not banned at the same time, which is a very BBC thing, frankly. They've always operated in that way.
Okay, another question. Let me see. Where are we going? Over to the back again. Oh, where are we going? Here.
Hi John, I just wanted to ask, as you get sent so many demos every week, do you actually ever get a chance to go into a record shop and buy anything, and what was the last thing you bought?
I'm hoping that I'll get the chance to do that this very week, actually. And we often, every Wednesday afternoon, we tend to go off on record shopping expeditions around London. And we often find, actually, that the best places to go are the fantastically uncool shops. And this will sound as though I've been paid money to say this, but we go to HMV on Oxford Street because they do have an amazing range of stuff. I mean, they don't have, you know, obscure imports from the Czech Republic and things, but they do have most things that you'd want. And but then we go off to little shops and back streets and stuff, and I'm hoping, under the guidance of my friend Ian, who's here somewhere, there he goes, and, he'll be able to tell us where to go to buy stuff, and probably going to waste prodigious amounts of money on records, putting a lot of money into the Nottingham economy. So.
I think he had to actually, his wife Sheila was saying they had to charter an extra flight, didn't you? A whole plane to bring all the records back from India that he recently bought.
Yeah, well, in New Zealand, yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, there's a great, I've never been to New Zealand, seeing as these boys are clearly not going to turn up.
5 minutes.
5 minutes?
Right, yeah.
Okay. Oh dear. Is there any chance of having another glass of red to keep me ticking over? Officer.
Oh dear, I feel the expletive count going up.
Well, no, not at all. No, I'm a model of moderation. But we went to New Zealand. This was myself, very ill-assorted bunch. Lynn Barber, who does very hard-nosed interviews with people for the Sunday papers, a really nice woman, as it turns out. And God, I can't remember who the others were now. But anyway, there was Andrew O'Hagan, who's just written some good books and writing another one at the moment. And we were to talk about the media, generally speaking, and I was out of my depth, to be honest. I was just there as kind of comic relief, I think, and to talk about famous people, the very few famous people that I knew. But before we were allowed to start this seminar, as it was described, we had to be welcomed into a Maori longhouse. Now, I'm a great believer in maintaining the integrity of indigenous cultures and all that sort of thing. But this Maori longhouse was about 5 times the size of this room and about twice as high. God bless you, my child. Your reward will come in heaven. But the walls were lined with highly stylized carvings of their gods, and I can't avoid telling you this, and it's going to get us into more trouble with the website people, but their gods all have orange erections of about 3
See,
foot.
I told you this would happen.
But it's not rude words. I mean, you know, these were about 3 foot high, so wherever you were in the room, you're never more than a few feet away from an orange erection, and it's genuinely disconcerting. And we had to be welcomed onto the campus and into the longhouse and effectively into New Zealand by this old fellow who spoke to us for 23 minutes in Maori. And never in all of my life I wished more that I spoke Welsh, so I could have replied to him with 23 minutes of Welsh. And if I had another life, the first thing I would do would be to learn to speak Welsh. That wasn't really the answer to anything either, was
There's
it?
a gentleman, there's a couple of gents right over the back who've been desperate to get a mic, and we haven't managed to sort them out until now.
Hi, John, my dad reckons he slept under your van at the Isle of Wight Festival. Do you remember the incident? Or is he lying to me?
Is he kind of cute?
He likes to think he is.
Tight buttocks? I did actually. Was it the very first Isle of Wight Festival, the one that Hendrix didn't play at?
I can't remember. He regales me with tales of Hendrix and.
Oh no, because I wasn't at that one. But I went to the very first one when Jefferson Airplane played. I was at that one, and people.
Okay, yeah,